My name is Marissa Ballard, and I am a self-admitted gaming addict. But being a female and being a gamer has often been difficult for me, and the tension between gender and gaming has only increased as I've matured. Within feminist analysis, much has been said about representations of gender in mainstream video games like Grand Theft Auto and BioShock Infinite. Anita Sarkeesian has created a whole video series analyzing the portrayal of women in games. According to Sarkeesian, many games contain harmful tropes that reward violent acts against women. As feminist scholar Gay Tuckman would say, women have been symbolically annihilated from video games. This idea of symbolic annihilation refers to the fact that for a long time, only one kind of female character has been present in games, and usually women were only used as plot devices. But there is so much more to gaming than mainstream AAA titles. According to Jason Wilson, a scholar who studies video game aesthetics, the independent game industry has an even longer history than big gaming. Wilson also argues that independent games can serve as a point of innovation. If indie games are to be a site of innovation, the next question to ask is if the tropes Sarkeesian describes are also present in the independent industry. To answer this question, it is important to note that indie games are produced without a publisher, and therefore the creators have much more control over the game itself. Because of this control, indie games can often feature more diverse representations of gender, more female protagonists, and more unique stories. Even though many indie games do feature more diverse representations, there are still issues within many indie titles. For example, the game Super Meat Boy employs the use of the damsel in distress trope every level.
As a trope, the damsel in distress is a plot device in which a female character is placed in a perilous situation from which she cannot escape on her own and must be rescued by a male character, usually providing the core incentive or motivation for the protagonist's quest.
In the video game Braid, there's also a damsel, this time in the stereotypical costume of a princess. However, the ending of the game comes with a twist. Rather than playing as the dashing hero sent to save the princess, the player realizes by reversing time, the game's main mechanic, that they have unknowingly been playing as the villain. Though Braid still features the problematic gender types of the knight and the damsel princess, the game reverses the player paradigm in that the player is the antagonist rather than the hero. One of the best indie games in terms of representation is one that contains two heroes named Vela and Shay. This game is Broken Age, which swept the indie industry by storm. It was crowdfunded through Kickstarter, and the success of its campaign showed gamers' interest in indie games. In the game, both males and females are given new representations. Shay is unlike the usual male protagonist in that he is skinny rather than muscular and very passive for much of the game. Vela, the other protagonist, is a strong female character who challenges the traditions of her town in an effort to gain agency and freedom.
All you need to know is how to look pretty in your dress. We'll take care of the rest.
So why don't we just fight Mog Chothra?
Silence! Talk like that could ruin the maiden's feast.
Vela is never an object of sexual desire, nor ever reduced to a plot device in Shay's story. In fact, both of their stories connect, and they must be equal partners to complete their mission. Unfortunately, the reception of Broken Age did not celebrate its unique themes. Instead, gamers focused negatively on the second act of the game and how much money it cost, never acknowledging its characters or innovations. Another indie game received a steady stream of backlash. The game was Gone Home, a subtle and slow game during which the player explores an empty house and slowly unfolds a romantic story about two teenaged girls falling in love.
But that's when she said, "You're so beautiful." And she was looking at me.
The voiceover by Sam, one of the girls, is expertly done and inspires emotion in the player. Her journal entries and stories perfectly expose the sweet relationship between her and her girlfriend Lonnie. The backlash Gone Home received took on a distinctly homophobic tone at times. Many other gamers questioned whether it was a game at all, instead calling it a walking simulator. The most recent indie game to garner a lot of fame, though this time it was positive, was Soma, a dystopian first-person horror game. The game spread everywhere, especially on YouTube, where famous YouTubers like Markiplier played it. Markiplier has over 10 million subscribers, so his playthrough would give the game a lot of exposure. Though the protagonist of Soma is male, the game focuses a lot on the female characters the player encounters. One of the most poignant parts in the game is when the player stumbles upon the last living human on planet Earth. She is guarding the technology that the player has been searching for. It is powerful that in a game about discovering and saving humanity, the last living human is a female, and she's protecting the invention that is arguably the last hope for preserving human existence. The moment is made even more touching as Sarah asks the player to help her commit suicide. As she is dying, she tells a story about her life.
Wish I could have died at home with my friends. You ever been to Greenland? It's very beautiful.
Soma, with its layered representation of gender, gives a lot of hope for the future of indie games. It made space for complex women in the horror genre, and created characters that both female and male players could support and relate to. Anita Sarkeesian begins each of her videos with the same quote.
As always, remember that it's both possible and even necessary to be critical of the media we enjoy.
In this quote, Sarkeesian rightly points out the importance of media studies because stereotypes in any form of media can reinforce harmful beliefs about gender. In video games, this applies doubly because the player directly interacts with the female characters. While indie games might still have their issues, overall many of the games put out in the last few years feature innovative stories and characters that can work to challenge those stereotypes and diversify the games industry. And we, the gamers and consumers, can support these diverse representations by purchasing, sharing, and spreading these games. As soon as companies see that these characters are attractive to the gaming audience, they will certainly be more interested in creating more of them.